The Immersion Foundation presents deep conversation with ambassadors on the cutting edge of combative arts as part of a greater mission to revive the study of haploology through research, expeditions, and archival projects around the world. The Immersion Foundation combines rigorous academic research with hands-on immersion in the combative arts and elite performance training, forging a new path of growth, adventure, and contribution.
All right, Sifu Chris, welcome back, and we begin our adventures again, and going after I believe, the sixth big central principle of adapting like a shadow, and then countering. And today we're going to talk about fitting in and art of fighting without fighting. So with that, why don't we just kick it off? And as always, we will go back and forth.
Sure.
So over to you, Sifu Chris.
That's fine. Again, as I said, I thought what we would do is just that. Is the sixth principle is adapt like a shadow, respond like an echo, which again is about the idea of effectively adapting and attuning to whatever opponent that you're facing, whatever situation that you're facing, with the fluidity as it says, as a shadow adapts to the object that it's connected with. My shadow on the ground. An echo when you stand. Again, you say something, the echo immediately returns back to you. So that's what we're talking about. Effectively attuning and adapting to the opponent, the situation. And again, as we know that combat, unarmed combat, when we're talking about it, it's fluid, it's unpredictable, it's constantly changing. So it is our abilities to be able to flow with that, and I like to use the term adaptively attune to the situation. So I think the first sub-principle into that is where we refer to it as cultivating the art of fitting in. And I think the first thing that I need to make clear with fitting in is that the better we're able to adapt and fit in with an opponent, the more successful we can be at dealing with them. But fitting in does not mean taking a role in which the opponent or the obstacle controls everything, because that's then you're purely reactive. You're relating to them. Well, again,
you're not confined by them.
Right. Yes, that's a purely reactive state, and that's not what we want at all, right? So that's what we mean, because sometimes people mistake when you say, well, fitting in with the opponent. Well, then that means that they dictate the terms and conditions of the fight, the situation, and it's not that at all. It's like I said, it's simply being able to, adaptively attune to what is taking place, and then deal with it effectively, right? So in order to do that, there are certain, if you want to call them, sub-principles or ideas behind that. And the first one is that we need to be able to relate effectively to what is going on. So, again, because the better we're able to relate to the situation, the better we can deal with it. So the first sub-principle, if you will, is that we need to be able to relate effectively. So, again, a sparring situation or whatever, sparring is about relationship. It's about relationship between you and the opponent. And this is a dynamic and fluid relationship that's moving around, right? So in any type of relationship, it involves an energy exchange, and your energy and the opponent's energy. So when the two of them come together, I think that's why you sometimes see in some of those the JKD notes about there's a coexisting relationship between you and the opponent. It's not two separate. It's one. Again, almost like yin yang. So it becomes your ability to be able to recognize and feel the energy, that the person that you're dealing with is giving to you, right? And as such, in any energy exchange, it's different. Each situation is different. So in order to be able to relate effectively, the better we are at seeing or feeling or sensing the energy the opponent is giving towards us, the better, again, we're able to deal with it. So, I sometimes say to the students, if you're having difficulty in sparring, are you relating effectively to that person, or is there something that's possibly preventing you from relating effectively? Again, preconceived ideas in your head, mental attitude, any of these type of things. So that same idea again goes to when we're dealing with a person in a non-combative situation. Obviously, are you able to actually relate to this person fully and completely? Are you tuning into the energy that they are exchanging with you? And is there something that could possibly be interfering with your ability to relate effectively? As I said, So again, the idea is to relate effectively. Part of relating effectively is that maintaining a clear perception of what's taking place. Seeing what is, as they say, versus what we wish could be or what we think it should be. Just having a non-judgmental perception, clarity of perception as to what is taking place. Now that perception can relate to external situations, right? But it can also relate to ourselves. So we need a clear perception of what's going on externally, but then we also need a clear perception of what's taking place within us. Again, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and at that particular point, we're talking of a non-judgmental perception, just seeing what is, and so like we said, relating effectively, seeing clearly what is, clear perception of what is taking place. The third one is maintaining flexibility of thought and action, which goes back again. These were principles that we've discussed before already. Principles like being like water, maintaining fluidity of thought and action, emptying your cup, using no way as way, having no set ways of dealing with things, set ways of acting. So that again is, you have relating effectively, maintaining clear perception of the situation, maintaining flexibility of thought and action, right? And then the next sub principle that would relate with that is that, do you have the proper tools and skills at your disposal that are going to allow you to adapt and fit in? They could be again, we sometimes use the term, they could be hard skills, physical skills, right? Technical performance skills. They could be but what we refer to as soft skills. Again, your ability to interrelate with the opponent or the situation. But if you don't have the tools and the skills, again, how are you going to do it? How are you going to be able to fit in? This person is a dynamic kicker and mobility, and do you have the performance tools and skills that are going to allow you to adapt and deal with that? If not, then you're in trouble, right? So having the proper tools, performance skills at your disposal, the utilization of elements such as timing and rhythm, right? Timing in your actions, being able to time the opponent's actions, controlling the actions, the rhythm of a situation, the pace of a situation. Are you able to adjust your rhythm if need be, or as necessary, to speed it up, to slow it down, to insert your rhythm into the situation? And like we said, timing. Man, you can have the best technique in the world, but if your timing's bad, then it can fall short. See? So cultivating your sense of timing, cultivating your sense of rhythm. Again, these are tactical elements that fit in. And then the primary one is cultivating the ability to flow. Now flow made a big come out, and I cannot pronounce the person's name, but there's a
Mikhail Chikalsky. Yeah.
Yes. I cannot pronounce his name.
Yeah, the Czech name is crazy.
But he brought out the book Flow, The Art of Optimal Experience, or things like that. But the term flow, as you probably know, we used in the Filipino arts, and then also the JKD, but a lot Dan used to use in the Filipino arts, the ability to flow, whether it's in numerato, whether it's in sumbrata, where you can move with the opponent's energy and deal with that. And so the state of flow is a position in which, where we use the term, it's where your awareness and your action merge together, and they become one. Everything is spontaneous. It's automatic, and we've talked about Wu Xin and Wu Wei, effortless action, things like that, to be able to flow in a situation. But that flow, again, if you were to take it back, is still built on all of these other principles that we've talked about. There are certain excuse me. There are what they sometimes refer to, I think the author refers to it as flow triggers that can allow you to move to that state. And if you don't have those, then again, we talked about that. If an artist wishes to express themselves painting, but they don't have the tools and the skills, right, that will allow them to do that, then how are they ever going to move into that state where you see an artist or whatever, a musician, and they just improvise, they just jazz, they go off on a guitar riff or a piano riff, and but they have that's a state of flow, So again, those are the prime elements, like we said, to cultivate the ability to adapt and fit into a situation, right? Um, sorry, I don't know why my throat's bothering me. I think it's just very dry here. So I'm going to take a
Please.
sip of water here.
I think makes a lot of sense. And as you were describing this, I could not help but think of a good jazz performance. And
Hmm.
part of it is, okay, how do you get into that particular rhythm, then steal that rhythm and create your own? And as you were describing it, that was what was coming into my mind. It's
Okay.
ultimately the art of high utilization and stealing that rhythm and making it your own, and then expressing yourself, so to speak.
Well, again, very much so. We talked about things just like distance, being the spatial relationship, and either you control the distance or the opponent controls the distance. That's it. Unless you're both standing so far apart that nothing's going to take place, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing as you said. Um, utilizing rhythm. We talked about this in the section on rhythm, that you have personal rhythms, your own rhythm of doing certain things, walking, brushing your teeth, whatever it is, that's your personal rhythm. And then you have shared rhythms, and those are rhythms in which involve you and another thing or another individual, and and being able to impose your rhythm if necessary on a situation. Again, um, having bad timing. Again, timing can make a huge difference, as we know, even in relating to a situation, possibly a work situation, where if if you're the manager or the supervisor, and you say the wrong thing at the wrong time, it can exacerbate a situation versus correcting it. So, so all of these are elements that go into cultivating your ability to again fit in effectively. You know, um, and then and again that takes us to the next point, and like I said, the ability to adapt like a shadow, respond like an echo. Um, we use the term um, uh, the art of fighting without fighting, right? And I'm sure everybody or most people watching this video now are very familiar with the famous scene on the Chinese junk in Into the Dragon. What's your style? Like you could call it the art of fighting without fighting, right? Um, well, that what we're talking about here is um, being able to effectively counter an opponent in a situation, whatever it is. It's simply effective countering. And as I said, we'll go into depth on various ways later, but we just want to cover the thing here. So countering opponents. Now we can go back to effectively countering external opponents, right? Whether it's an individual, whether it's a challenge, an obstacle that comes up. But then again, we have the internal opponents. Those sometimes we use the term the invisible enemies in your mind. Self-doubt, um, anger, fear, worry, um, over self-consciousness. Those are internal opponents. So the idea is to be able to effectively deal with them or counter them. So the idea first is to understand, to effectively counter is to understand the nature of attack. What is it attack? Whether it is a physical attack, whether it's a psychological attack. It has whatever it is. It has goals. So the objective of any attack is to knock you off balance if it's a physical attack, If it's a more of a mental attack, to take you off of your center, if you will, right? Sometimes that term's to use. So it's to have some kind of effect on you. It's to draw some kind of reaction from you that the opponent can use against you. You know, so any form of attack, if you look at it, goes into those things. Whether it's somebody coming up and making a negative comment to you about your work, and why do you, what would make you think that you're ever going to learn how to do that properly? Bang! That's the same as somebody throwing a legitimate punch at you, if you will, right? And so what is the nature? What is the objective? What is the objective of any attack? Well, yeah, it's simply to land. If it's sparring, it's to land a hit against you, right? Or it is to do something like an attack by drawing or progressive indirect attack. It is to do something that will cause you to react in, be it a particular way, a way that the opponent is aware of and recognizes that they can use in a negative way against you. So you need to understand the nature of attack. What it's for, what its purposes are for, right? And then what we want to do is we want to look at the various responses towards any kind of attack, right? So obviously there's the prime three that are talked about so often. There's the freeze response, the deer in the headlights look, where whatever it is, again, the opponent makes a particular move, and for a few, whatever, half a second, or you just freeze. Everything just stops. That's why the deer in the headlights, as we said, or somebody again comes up to you and makes a comment to you, and it just catches you off guard, and you just get stuck there. So you might freeze. You have flight. Man, I just want to get out of here. I want to run away. I don't want to deal with this. Just get me out of here. I'm not interested in doing anything but escaping. So whether you leave the situation in sparring, maybe you just say, "Oh, that's it. I'm done." Take a knee. Say that, throw in the towel, as they say. Even if it's a mental thing, there's, can I do something? There's a mental attack going on, and it's making me anxious. So can I just run away from it? Can I put something else in there that can take its place, that will override it? It doesn't fix it. But what it does is it just takes my mind off of it, right? And then you have the fight response. Somebody says something to you or does something to you, and you immediately lash out. Bam, fight back. And again, we're not saying this is not necessarily a negative thing at times, because encountering sometimes that's exactly what you need to do. What we're talking about is that especially on these attacks where they're not physical. Somebody does something, somebody says something, and your immediate thing is, "Wow, I'm just going to flare. I'm just going after this person, and I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to just..." The problem with all three of these responses is that they don't really resolve anything, and in a lot of cases, they allow the opponent to continue what it is that they want to do. So the fourth response goes back to with training in martial arts, as we know, is to flow. So Freeze is that like I said, freeze, I stay where I am. Flight is I run away. Fight is I immediately lash back. Flow is that I just stay calm and respond to what's taking place. I'm looking at it. I'm going to see what's developing. I'm very aware of any other potentials that might come off of that. But why not? That's the fourth response, is to be there. Again, I think you have to have certain skills that will allow you to do that. Otherwise you do end up getting stuck with those three primary responses. And quite honestly, look, I mean, they all could be very useful at times. If I'm walking down a hiking trail and a grizzly bear jumps out, fight's going to be right on the number one on my radar. I'm sure not going to flow and try and stay there and see what happens. I mean, unless I don't have a choice and I have that moment. But a priori is get the hell out of town sort of thing, right? So like we said, what are the type of responses that you have when you're to work on countering, So again, in order to help you with this idea of countering, there are certain principles. Again, first is to be aware of what is taking place. As we know in martial arts, in sparring, the sooner you see an attack coming towards you, the sooner you're aware of it, the better position you are to deal with it, right? I mean, when the punch is like right here, an inch away from your face, man, it's a bit late to be trying to figure some of this stuff out. So maintaining awareness, being able to recognize this and recognize a signal, recognize whatever it is, then the sooner you'll be able to deal with it. Another one is, again, know yourself. We all have. I think every one of us has triggers or buttons that, if they're pushed, we respond in particular ways, right? And however they come about, they're there. And to know what they are, I'm sure, again, everybody's had the position that oftentimes the people that are very close to you and know you best know what your buttons or what your triggers are. So that can be used against you. So if you know what those are, then you'll be able to immediately recognize somebody's either pushing my button or attempting to push my trigger on that kind of thing, So, being aware, knowing yourself, knowing this opponent, having a clear perception of who this person is that is attacking you. Excuse me. And to go back to what I talked about before about maintaining clear perception, that's very important when we're talking about knowing the opponent, because it involves not. Sometimes you can project false images of strength on somebody. You don't see them as they really are. For some reason, you project some kind of false strength on them. You give them more power than they actually have. And so that's a very, very important point. You don't see this person as Goliath. Just see them as another person. Don't project. Don't transfer your fears or whatever onto them. Don't project false images of them, and then know what their intentions are, know what the opponent's intentions or goals are. What are they attempting to do? Again, are they attempting to if we go back to sparring, is their intention or a combative situation might be even better. You're facing with somebody. What is their intention? Is it just to scare you? To make you afraid, to kind of show that they have power over you? Is it to intimidate you, right? Is it to hurt you? Is it again to inflict pain upon you because that is their nature or that is what they choose to do? Is it to take your life? What is their goal? There's a very clear, obviously, as we all can see, there's a very clear difference between somebody who wants to intimidate you and maybe wants to hurt you a little bit, and somebody who's out to seriously damage you, or as I said, to take your life. So, what are their intentions? So, as I said, being aware of it, knowing who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your buttons, knowing the opponent, who are they, what are they, what are they attempting to do? Again, knowing their intentions, and then we've got that. Then understanding the types of tactics and strategies this person may attempt to use to accomplish their aim. We've talked about this before. Is this person going to come at you like a freight train? Wow, just straight, full on, full bore, Or are they going to try and work their way in? What is their strategy, and what tactics are they going to use to achieve that strategy? So, like I said, what their intentions are, what tactics they're going to try and use. Are they going to be forceful? Are they going to be out front and in your face, or are they going to be trying to be sly and come at you from your blind side? So by recognizing and understanding their tactics, we use that idea that you now have the ability to read their playbook, so to speak. You know what their game is. You know what tactics they're going to try and use against you. And then all of these elements, as we've talked about, these all fit into, again, as we talk later about particular ways or particular methods of countering. So that's why I said those are the two major factors that I wanted to cover here is the adaptation, the ability to cultivate the ability to fit in, to attune and adapt to the opponent, and then things that you need to know in order to be able to utilize these various forms of counterattack or counterattack and defense that we'll go into at another time. Those are the main issues right there.
I think that's really clear, and I think it's great to break it this way, Sifu Chris. So I'm curious, when you're working with students, let's say they've been around for a bit, they have their basics and everything sort of under control. How do you generally show them or teach them or guide them to be able to see, feel, and then move like a shadow in a systematic way? Are there drills and methods and methodologies that you found particularly useful in doing this?
Yeah. There's a number of them, and I'm continually finding new ones and or variations of ideas. And so probably the most basic one is working on helping them deal with footwork and adapting and fitting in. So, whether there's a drill, the mirror footwork drill, where you mirror image your partner as they move. But like I said, it goes further than that, because what happens is that if you just always mirror them, then they're the initiator all of the time. So taking your ability to move with an opponent and then break that movement and then become the initiator of that movement yourself. Tactile awareness, and I don't just mean, when I say tactile awareness, I don't just simply mean, because everybody usually thinks, oh, Chi Zao, which is great, harmonious spring, but there are numerous types of tactile awareness that I will use that, from a contact reflex, will allow them to relate. And then what happens when that contact is gone? Reading distance. There's again, I'm always just looking for ways in which I can enhance their performance on those type of things. So the psychological vision, that's their thing. They have to develop that on their own. So I can put them in a situation where, like I said, for example, they're able to relate to whether the opponent is moved. They do something, and then they have to relate to if the opponent stays where they are, if they retreat, if they move forward, and training their awareness. Again, visual awareness drills, all types. It's just, there's so many of them that it's sort of hard to pin down, because I'll look and if it's for a class, I might say, okay, yeah, like I said, is what do I need? What do I need to do to help enhance the class's performance in this category, right? Or this aspect. But if I'm working one-on-one, then it's okay, what is the issue or that this individual is having, and then how can I do that? So I might take a variation of a theme of footwork or striking. But then the other thing, quite honestly, is it's flight time. Whatever you call it, flight time, mat time, training floor time of doing it and training yourself to be able to relate. So I'm always not yelling at my students, but I'm always telling my students that idea of, I want you to do a technique just because you're doing a technique. I want you to do it because it's relating to the opponent and what is going on at that particular moment. And that puts them in a situation where they're constantly having to stay engaged and stay on, So, yeah, in both the JKD and also in the Filipino martial arts, I'm always trying to figure out ways that I can improve those capacities. Tactical elements, strategic elements, physical elements, timing, distance. And so I'm always looking and trying to figure out ways to do it. So
I personally have found that usually the psychological adapting is the hardest thing. That both to communicate and to impart. I was wondering if you had thoughts on that, or if you see it differently.
No, I agree, because that's an internal thing. That is them. Look, you can work on their footwork, and you can do this. You need to do this, and you need to do that. But when you're going into their mind, you're going into their territory. Sometimes I will do things. For example, if I find a student is getting too much into their own head when when I'm asking them to do something, work on particular things, and they're adapting, whether it's light, easy sparring or weaponry like counter to counter. What I will do is I will flood them. I'll just flood them with material. I mean, bang, 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 so they don't have time to go in and do all of that thinking and breaking down. But the psychological thing, no, that's a very individual thing, and how much of it do they do on their own? Again, we're back to the thing of if a student comes in twice a week and they do that and they're in the class, and that's fine, and then they don't do anything else, then their growth is going to be much more limited. I'll do something, for example, and I'll use an example from the Filipino martial arts because I think it shows it more clearly, right? Sometimes the JKD ones are much harder to see. So what I'll do is I'll have two people facing off, and maybe I'm having them work where this person is unarmed versus the person with a stick, and their job is to work on being able to. They don't have the option of flight, so they're going to have to stay there and deal with the situation. But that psychological thing is I'll have the person with the stick, and the speed will be adjusted as well. I have to say that because it's not because that's crazy. So I'll have this person swing all different strikes, and I'll have the other person start maybe 10 feet out, okay? And then I'll just have them slowly move forward on their own pace, right? Until they reach a point where they start to feel uncertain or insecure, or they can feel something coming up, not necessarily fear, but nervousness. And where is that point? And then I'll say, okay, now back out from that point. Now you don't feel it, right? And what I'll try and do is I'll try and get them to work to the point where they can get a closer distance without feeling that fear. So again, you could do the same thing with JKD, is you can have a person just throwing punches and bang, and all right, I want you to start 6 feet away, and I want you to move in, and I want you to move in, and now where is that moment? Where is that point when all of a sudden that psychological, that insecurity starts to come in? Okay, now back off till it goes. Now go back in till you feel it, and see if you can stay there. But the psychological thing, that's a very, very individualized thing. It's not something where you can just create this scenario and everybody's going to do it. Because again, if they don't have the physical skills, that's going to affect their psychological skills and their psychological vision. Their nature. Again, that's also an individual thing. There are people that they're willing to go there, and then there are people that are, like we said, there are crashers, there are aggressive fighters, and there are counter fighters. What is their nature? It's something you can work. I think it's something you can work with them on, but I don't think it's something that you can necessarily go in because it's inside their mind. So I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think it's somewhat of a loop, and for the effective delivery of a technique, if you will, for lack of a better word, the physical skill, the mental and emotional willingness, and then also I think your values come into play. Like, for example, you're a pacifist. No matter how many skills you have,
Yes.
you're not going to be able to deliver.
Yeah.
So I think it's a loop, and that tuning has to happen. And I struggle with this sometimes, meaning, like what's the right way to go about it? And ultimately, I don't think there's a right way. And what I found to be what I found to be the greatest stumbling block is the values that they hold dearest. And I've seen some guys who have exceptional skills when it comes to just demonstrating things and being nice, but if you add that real spark in, or they have to actually, God forbid, use it on the street, they freeze.
Yeah. I think you can do certain things where you, as you said, you can train them to spark off and things like that. But if that is their nature, it can be so individualized. We've all seen the parent or the child who somebody's doing something to their brother and bang, and you just go. It depends on the situation. I remember Brandon Lee talking about it in an interview once, where he was like, if somebody comes home, or if your friend comes home and he's beaten up, and you said, oh, this guy beat him up. You're like sitting around talking about, well, let's go find this guy and beat him up, and and there's this talk and there's this all kind of stuff. But if it happened to be your mother or your sister,
Dangerous things.
it's on. There is, like I said, that's out there. That's out there in the street. So
yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of something that I've been working with some of these guys, Tausug guys in Mindanao, the Sulu Sea. And I asked him, I said, like, how the hell do you get into that spark off at will? Because it just takes a fraction of a second. And he said, right from the time I was a little kid, my father always told me, when you enter that fight, think your mother and your sister are behind the enemy lines, and these are the guys that you'd go through to get them. So when you said that, that reminded me. And
yeah, it's like different people have those ideas.
Yes.
I talked to I had a student once who was very much a pacifist, and I don't say that in a negative way, but the student said, "Oh, I could never kill somebody and whatever," and I said, I disagree, because I believe everybody has that capacity given the right circumstances. And she was like, no, I could never do that. And I go, okay, here's a scenario. You have a child. That child is, whatever, 10, 11 years old. You are in a wheelchair. You are completely immobilized. You can move nothing on your body except your right index finger. You have a gun in that hand, right? Bang! An axe-wielding murderer comes and chops down the door to your house. Your child is there. The only thing you can move is that index finger. That gun is pointed directly at that person's heart. What are you going to do? And this person actually and around. Well, and I'm like, they're going to do this terrible things to your child. What are you going to do? And she still kind of was like, and I was like, wow, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are people that kind of do that. I just believe that everybody has
the potential.
Yes, given the right, again, trigger, if you will. Like you said, the ones down in the Sulu Sea. Yeah, I have to get to them, to my family, and come hell or high water, I'm going to do that. Yeah. And I think I mentioned it before. I think it was because we just talked about it recently. Is like Bruce had the ability to just switch it on, as Dan used to say. I mean, it was just like a light switch going on. But then You know, that thing about, well, you've got to step through the door of madness, but then when it's over, you've got to make sure that you can come back through that door. You know, um,
I think a lot of people don't work on that, and I think that's a more critical skill to develop. Otherwise, you're going to destroy all your relationships.
yeah, yeah. It's it's very difficult because there's so much in society
Yeah.
that is working against that. And again, we have to be very careful here because we're talking about balance and things of that nature. Because with having children, but like when my daughter was in school and zero tolerance policy, you throw, you go. They had all of these things, and so children are being raised of always looking outside for some external figure that's going to come and save them. And I remember reading about the Virginia Tech shooting, the mass shooting, that there were actually people in the room, male, female, college students in the room with this man who had two empty guns and was taking out things to reload them, and nobody did anything. And then the only people that took solid action were people who were athletes and members of like the ROTC, because those had been taught to take action. Everybody else had been raised with, you have to find an external figure. You have to find the teacher. You have to find the principal. And in those moments, like you said, that can make the difference. And that's why I say it's very hard because you don't want the other extreme. I believe that somebody who decides they want to fight you just because you looked at them the wrong way, well, that's ego, that's other things. But when you're talking of defending yourself, again, that's why I said how far, when I talk to my students about self-defense on the street, I tell them, if you have the time, if you're given the time, the question you need to ask yourself when you're dealing with an individual is, if this goes ballistic, am I willing to step up and exceed the energy that this person's going to attempt to express towards me? And if the answer is no, then you better not go there, because that's where people get hurt. So what is the energy? Is this person wanting to take my life? Because if they are, am I willing to step up and do what's necessary to prevent them? Very hard issues. Or not hard, but I believe it goes back to what you said, your values. If you're raised, I was raised with the value, or partially, and through martial arts, that life is the most valuable thing, and I can remember Dan saying on several occasions when he was talking about different things that it's very easy to take a life. Anybody can do it, but once you do that, giving it back is impossible. So, yeah, you're into what is your values, what are your morals, and that's very hard because when I lived in LA and my school was down in Venice, California, and I didn't see the gangs and different stuff, and these children, these kids this was bred into them from the time they were small, so if you have person A over here who's impressing upon their child from the time they're small the sanctity of life and the value of life, and that, and then over here you have somebody who is being pushed into their brain that if this person looks at you wrong, you need to respond with violence. Which is why I think half of the government things that they do are they try and band-aid approaches on everything because they don't want to look at it that way. They don't want to approach that. And you have to look at it this way. So it's never black and white, things like that. So yeah, what are your values? What is your personal code of conduct or values? Now, I think we talked about it before. I would go to the ends of the earth to avoid a confrontation, to avoid a fight. But if I'm walking down a street and I see some guy smacking his girlfriend, or especially if I see some guy, hurting an older person, I don't care what the city ordinances may say. I'm stepping in because that's my personal code of conduct. So, and if that goes against the city's code of conduct, well, then I'll deal with that when it happens. But I'm not going to allow that to happen. No. And I'm not going to pull out my friggin' phone and videotape it so I can get clicks on TVs. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and I think that's part of the sad thing, I think, because I think most have no clue what they value or what is important to them, and that's half the trouble, if you ask me. I don't think society teaches you to do that, because then you become a dangerous person if you know what you stand for.
yes, I guess exactly, 100%. Yeah, it's true. So yeah, how do we keep them in? Give them bread and games. Right?
Yes,
Right.
it's worked from the time of the Romans.
Yeah. Give them bread and games and keep them occupied. And but again, like I said, it goes back to that. I was taught to defend myself, and if I find a person in weakness, to defend them too, right? Not the other way around, but yeah, it's no, it's that's your job to do that, not what some societal group or governmental group tells you that you're allowed to do and things like that. Yeah, I have big issues with that when my daughter was, I told you, going to school, because listening to this stuff, and I said it ain't gonna happen. If somebody's following my daughter out there, and if she can't leave, and then she's gonna take care of business, And
I kind of got into trouble with something similar. My 7-year-old was playing soccer, and this one guy came and pushed her, and she was a little shaken up. I was there. I didn't intervene. I said I want her to learn how to handle it, and then I said, go and tell him don't ever do it again, and if he does, kick his face. You know how to do it, and I'll step in then.
Yeah.
And I said, don't hold back. I said, give them one chance. Tell them you don't like it. And if they continue, go for it.
Well, again, that's it. Because this is we're back to like the bullying. This is intimidation. Well, if until a person learns there's repercussions for that,
they won't stop.
Right? Yeah. And I told my daughter that, and I said, you know what? If I have to meet with the parents and the principal, I'm going to tell them, you know what? Your kid does this. I'm going to come and have a talk with you about it. And if you don't take care of business, I'm not going to do anything to that child. But what I'm going to do is you and I are going to have a little talk here, and otherwise I'll just, like I said, it's like, no, we talked about that I wrote a blog about children, and that we have to teach our children that they have not only the right to defend themselves, they have the responsibility to defend themselves. And that's the thing that is not being taught.
No.
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 Yeah, I kind of, one of the parents walked up to me and says, "Oh, how can you do that to your daughter?" I said, "Efficiently and effectively, because that's what she's going to do. Because she's not going to depend on some man to come and protect her, or somebody else to come and protect her. She should be able to take care of it herself."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that, again, that's the whole point, right?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
you do not get to do that.
Yes.
And I'm not going to simply, walk away. There will be accountability.
Consequences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
It's that's the thing. It's very difficult in a society that you mustn't do this. But I always the term I always use with my daughter and her friends was, and when I'm talking at my school sometimes, is I talk, if you didn't pull the tiger's tail, you wouldn't have got mauled.
Yep.
So
I like that.
yeah,
I like that.
So that's
Yeah.
why he's like, yeah, you tell that to the kid, man. If you didn't, what they always say, don't poke the bear. Don't go up and poke the bear. Yeah. So I always said that to them,
I'm going to steal that line.
Yeah. It's you take it. It's yours. But it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of like, well, well, here's the thing. If you didn't pull the tiger's tail, you wouldn't have got mauled.
Yeah.
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 And that goes just as equal for adults. When you see these guys, they get in your face and whatever, crazy.
Yes.
Interesting. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Any closing thoughts on the shadow piece for today, Chris?
Well, again, I think that adapt like a shadow, respond like an echo is one of the core tenets, the fundamental core themes, tenets, principles upon which Jeet is built. So, what are the tools and the skills that one needs to develop and cultivate and then the experience that they develop that will allow them to adapt like a shadow or respond like an echo. I think that's just the prime thing, So.
All right. I look forward to us continuing with the second part of this next week. And again, as always, thank you, Chris.
Yeah. I look forward to it. Like I said, we'll go through, countering, different methods, defensive skills, all of that stuff. So that'll be good. I look forward to that.
Me too.
Cool. So now I just